One bright, sunny day, the maids were walking through the corridors of the castle, cheerfully discussing something with smiles on their faces. They were very surprised when they looked ahead and saw Lady de Laffion running towards them. They bowed and wished her good morning, and she rushed past them, smiling and wishing them a good day. Watching her go, the maids noted that she had not changed at all, and it was rare to meet such a constant person as she. This girl's name is Evie de Laffion, and she ranks #1 in the royal media as a lady who should never be emulated. At the same time, she was known as a troublemaker whom no one dared to contradict. Rushing around different rooms, checking everything in the garden, she could not understand where he had hidden. Realizing that titles and labels had no meaning to her at all, she called out loudly for Charles. The guy turned to her with a smile while the girl was thinking about the fact that today she would officially go on a date with her first friend. Noticing that her hair was disheveled, he asked what had happened. Plucking up her courage, Evie, without thinking twice, approached the guy and told him that she liked him. Grabbing his hands, she asked if it was really mutual. Smiling, Charles agreed and said that he liked her very much. The joyful girl smiled and suggested the idea that they should start dating officially. Without letting her finish saying that from that day on they were a couple, Charles announced with a smile that this would not happen. Standing there in complete bewilderment, Evie assumed that she had heard wrong, but the guy said that everything was indeed so. Asking not to be misunderstood, Charles said that her feelings made him incredibly happy, but now was not the time. Telling him to stop, Evie, hiding her anger behind a smile, said that there had been some misunderstanding. After asking the girl to calm down, the guy said that he was not yet good enough to date her and that he needed to have excellent qualifications. When asked what that qualification was, he recalled her words that if she loved someone, he should be willing to kill a dragon for her. With complete confidence, Charles said that he would do everything possible and defeat the dragon. Gently touching her cheek, the guy said that he was very glad that he had managed to see her before his departure. After waving to Evie one last time, Charles announced with a smile that he was off to fight the dragon. Evie clutched her head, unable to understand why the hell he had gone dragon hunting in an era of calm. To understand why she is so determined to have a relationship with him and why he suddenly went dragon hunting, we need to rewind a little. One bright sunny day, when Evie was celebrating her 10th birthday, her whole family gathered around the table. The father and her younger brother congratulated the girl on her birthday with a smile. After thanking them, Evie immediately asked where her gift was, but her father told her to blow out the candles first. Thinking about asking for a new dress or a small donkey, the girl leaned over the cake and blew out the candles. At that very moment, when she blew out the candles, she remembered the secret of this world. When the girl turned to her father with horror in her eyes, he noted with a smile that she could ask for whatever she wanted. A frightened Evie stuttered as she said that she needed to go to the royal palace. This world was a romantic fantasy she read in her past life. In that novel, the black-haired villain led a rebellion, and the de Laffion family was wiped out without a trace. Realizing that she would not allow this to happen, Evie jumped up from the table and told her father that she urgently needed to go to the royal palace. Her father, noting that she was too small, asked if she could ask for anything else, and her younger brother offered to play with her. They looked with great surprise at the girl, who, realizing that they would not agree right away, stood up from the table. Watching the girl grab an axe from the wall and run into the yard, the father tried to stop her, saying it was dangerous. When the girl ran into the garden, her father, who had caught up with her and not understanding what she was doing, asked her to remove such a dangerous thing as an axe. Evie understood that if she wanted to save her family, she needed to get into the royal palace at any cost. Having told her father to choose, the girl set a condition: either she cuts down the tree that holds the memory of her mother, or he sends her to the palace. Sitting in the carriage, her father told her to stay close to him and greet even strangers properly. The girl noted that he had said this for the 17th time, when her father had also told her not to run, like at home. Looking at his yawning daughter sitting opposite him, he couldn't understand if he was doing everything right. That day, when he asked her what she meant, Evie pointed out that all the other children, as soon as they turned 10, went to the palace. When the father wanted to explain the whole situation, the girl, bowing her head with tears in her eyes, suggested that they were of lower status than those children. It all ended with him taking her to the imperial palace anyway. The heroine realized that he knew her too well when she asked him if he trusted her, he answered in the negative. She mentally asked her father for forgiveness because she understood that this was a huge step towards a more significant act of a loving daughter. Her plan included that in order to change the future, she needed to meet a potential antagonist. Escaping without being noticed was a great start, only the problem was that she was wandering in the opposite direction from the main gate and got lost. Not understanding where she was, she also had no idea where the main antagonist was. The key events in her mind were blurry, and she didn't quite know the location of his childhood residence. While thinking that she needed to try another method, she realized that according to the contents of the web novel, the illegitimate child should be living somewhere around here. Looking around, Evie decided that she needed to climb a tree first. She understood that although the first prince might be a villain, at the moment he was just a child who had lost the king's favor. Thinking that he was about her age, the girl climbed to the top of the tree. She understood that his location could be unpredictable and noticed a deserted building in the most remote corner of the palace. Thinking he might be there, Evie wondered if she should try to get in through the window. All she knew about the first prince was that he had gone mad and destroyed his family. Before that could happen, Evie had to meet him and create a close relationship. The prince's vendetta was his own business. She also understood that when their king gave orders, there was no choice but to obey. Repeating these words in her head, Evie tried to jump to another tree, but she didn't expect it to be much further away than she expected. Before she could reach the branch of another tree, she immediately flew down with horror in her eyes. When she landed on the ground, she was very surprised to realize that it was soft and she was not hurt at all. Raising her head, she saw a boy her age in front of her, who asked in bewilderment if she was an assassin. Looking at the girl, he asked whether she was really a child or a person pretending to be one. When he told her to get out, she immediately jumped up from her seat and asked for forgiveness. Coming to her senses, she realized that the boy had black hair, which was rare in the kingdom, and green eyes. When she asked if he was the first prince, the boy began to talk about whether he was hiding his identity because it had been revealed. He asked if she was stupid when Evie looked at him in bewilderment, and then said that she was not very smart. She thanked him awkwardly when he noted with bewilderment that at least she was conscious. Hearing this, the little prince could not understand how one could be so lacking in intelligence. Looking at him, Evie realized that the potential antagonist was definitely her age. Not understanding why she was looking at him like that, the prince asked if she was waiting for the moment to cut off his head. When the girl said she wasn't interested in his neck, he began to assume that the assassin was threatening her family to kill him. Realizing that she needed to get this over with quickly, Evie revealed that she was not a murderer, to which the prince asked if she thought he would believe that. When she noted that she didn't even have any signs, he suggested that she was planning to jump out of the tree and crush him. She didn't quite take into account that the conversation could go in the wrong direction and didn't know how to explain the situation. Realizing that she had promised her sister not to use this method, she mentally apologized to her and asked the prince with a terrified look how old he was. She knew that a person instinctively retreats before a creature that is larger and stronger than him, so she asked again how long he had lived in this world. Evie thought he was 2 years younger, but when she found out he was going to be 12 soon, she was quite surprised. Noting that she had celebrated her 10th birthday a few days ago, the girl said that she had come to the palace in honor of this and had gotten lost. She clarified that 10 years is the age of true innocence, sweetness, and knowing nothing. Thinking that he was calmer than expected, the girl said that her name was Evie de la Fionne. Assuming that he might be completely powerless, she said that she never even dreamed of meeting a prince. The boy clarified that she had no roots when he learned that her father was the first in their family to receive a baronial title. Angry at this nasty manner of speaking, Evie said that even though they had no roots, she was a real cutie. She did not understand how there could be such an expression on his face when he saw her. When the prince asked if she thought he was so stupid, Evie understood that in this world there were no villains without a story, because it was without these stories that the future could be completely different. If she can instill the right values in each of them during their childhood, then they will certainly have a chance to become ordinary people. Knowing that she needed to stay strong, the girl asked him what he was doing there and explained that she was admiring the beauty of the palace. When he asked her if she was an assassin, she began to get angry and repeated that she was not. When the boy asked if she was the one, Evie screamed loudly that she had never been a killer to begin with. He responded aggressively that it was where she was not allowed to go when the girl began asking where that place was and whether he lived there. Suddenly, the boy asked how she knew that he was a prince, because ordinary people don't even know what he looks like. Evie said that he was too handsome to be a normal person and also had black hair. She understood that he could not be an extra with such external data, when suddenly the prince asked if she was behaving this way because he knew who he was. Asked if she had any manners, the girl noted that she took etiquette lessons every other day. When the prince asked her in bewilderment why she was climbing trees then, she replied that it was all to enjoy the view. Noting that, fortunately, not a single branch had broken, she noticed the prince's intent gaze on her. When the boy pointed out that she had hurt herself when she fell, Evie touched her forehead and felt pain. He didn't understand what she was talking about when she asked if that was all, and the girl clarified that he should have asked if she was in pain or offered to help her. Evie was in great surprise when the prince asked why he had to do this. She asked if this meant that someone noble like a prince should not be lenient with the daughter of a lower-status aristocrat. She was amazed when, after asking why he should care about someone else's pain, he clarified that her pain was her personal business. Hearing such a dismal answer from the child, the heroine understood that the problem was not in the wealth of the class system, but in the failed upbringing. Not understanding what kind of life a person must have had for him to speak like that at his age, Evie noted that he was only 12 years old. With the idea that it's not too late to start filling in the blanks, the girl said that when someone is hurt, it's okay to ask if they're okay, even if you're not close. The prince could not understand why he should bother so much when the girl informed him that in such cases he should offer a handkerchief to stop the bleeding. At that very moment, the cries of her father calling for Evie were heard, and the heroine immediately remembered that she had left her father and, noting that she needed to go, Evie suggested that they become friends, since fate had brought them together. As she continued to listen to her father's cries calling for him, she noted with a smile that friendship is very important in childhood. She understood perfectly well that now that they had met, he could slowly work through the remaining problems. When the girl was asked if she enjoyed her trip to the imperial palace, she exclaimed happily. Noting that he could not believe his daughter had grown so much, the king said that they should have given advance notice of the visit so that he could find suitable accommodation. At that moment, when Evie first felt relief, she didn't even think that she would ever find herself at a tea party with the king. She had heard before that her father had saved the king in his younger years, but she hadn't expected him to keep them so close to him. Not understanding where his friend had found such a beautiful child, the king remarked how unfortunate it was that such a sweet face was wounded. Upon learning that this had happened nearby, his face immediately changed, and he ordered the first prince to be brought. When the boy came and asked with a trembling voice if his father had called him, the king took the fork from the table. Evie was absolutely horrified when the king, shouting loudly that he was disgracing their family, threw a fork straight at the first prince. She couldn't understand what had happened and why he had deliberately thrown a fork at him. The heroine knew that the king did not like the first prince, but this was too unpredictable an act. When the king exclaimed that his knight's daughter had been wounded, Evie could not understand how he could accuse a man out of nothing. Incorrect methods of discipline have a huge impact on personality development, but this was more like an venting of anger. After asking the king to stop, Evie said that the prince had done nothing and it was entirely her fault. Thinking that everything was fine, the girl said that she had never met a prince before. She noted that he would certainly have helped her if he had seen that she was hurt. The king smiled and said that she had the same kind heart as her father when he told his daughter that she should not interfere in royal affairs. Turning to the girl, the king noted with a smile that everything that happens in the palace is the responsibility of its owner. The boy hung his head guiltily and gave a negative answer when the king angrily asked him if he had any objections. Saying that his lowly origins were making themselves felt, the king said that he could go. A little later, remembering the moment when he asked permission to deviate, Evie couldn't understand whether she should have followed him. She understood that the king's unacceptable behavior became food for the future villain. The girl was very worried about their first meeting, and in the end, the king ruined everything. She didn't understand whether she should use another plan and find refuge in another country. The problem was that, due to the expenses of the mansion, they didn't have any extra money even to ask for asylum. Turning to San, Evie asked what he thought about living in another country. Her brother said that although he was not against it, his father would certainly not allow it. When he asked her what made her worry about something like that, the girl said that she had made a huge mistake. Sanu didn't understand what she could have done that was so terrible when Evie said that she would grit her teeth in anger even after many years. After learning that it was not her fault but that she should apologize, her brother asked if she was going to leave things as they were. Noting that if everything could be solved with words, then laws would not exist, Sanu said with a smile that she had to be sincere. One cloudy day, a loud cry was heard that he was profiting from the children who were brought to him, and had the conscience to treat them that way. The man could not figure out how to expand this business, because his face was so recognizable. Let's notice a little girl with pink hair. He immediately became happy, because he realized that he could get a tidy sum for her. When he asked her what she was doing there alone, the little girl said that she was waiting for someone. Noting that she was probably hungry, the man offered her some bread with a sinister smile. He was very surprised when, after his words about him being able to take the first bite, she hit him with all her strength. The man couldn't understand what she was talking about when she suddenly announced that she had waited too long. Thinking that the vile street rat had dared to raise a hand against him, he began to shout about her getting involved in the business of grown people. With his knife, he only managed to cut part of her hair, but the girl immediately jumped away from him, telling him not to make her laugh. Having been hit by her again, he could not understand why this bastard was so strong. He couldn't understand what they were talking about when Evie asked him not to rack his brains over it. She said with a smile that human trafficking is just a business and prison is just a room. Approaching the boss, one of the knights reported that he had checked everything, but the boss insisted that he should examine everything more carefully. They were very surprised and did not understand what such a little girl was doing there when Evie came in and greeted them with a smile. The boss was extremely surprised when the girl asked where she should put the wanted criminal. Seeing that the hair color and scars matched, they could not understand how the child was able to catch such a dangerous criminal. The man was quite surprised when Evie suddenly asked if she could get a reward. With horror on her face, the girl asked if they deducted taxes from the rewards. She was very pleased when the man, with an awkward smile, informed her that there were no taxes. He didn't quite understand what they were talking about when Evie, with a smile on her face, announced that he had just taken the first step towards world peace. Knowing that she had an idea thanks to San, she was happy to know whose brother it was. Evie knew that simply apologizing would only make things worse with the prince, but she couldn't ignore it, even if it wasn't her fault. The problem was that she had received her first salary, but what the prince needed was still too expensive for her pocket. Having received a huge bag of money from the knight for the captured criminal, the girl happily thanked him. She immediately agreed when she was told not to fight the criminal herself next time and to inform an adult. Even though she had lost 10 days because the criminal was in hiding, she knew it was worth it. Suddenly, the thought came into her head to keep it for herself, because this money was earned through honest work. Having dispelled all these thoughts, she told herself to pull herself together because this was all to correct the terrible impression of the first prince. When she told the tavern that she wanted to buy something, the seller said that the things there were very expensive and asked her to come here with her mother. After saying that everything was fine and she had the money, she asked if the man could wrap it as a gift. The seller first said that they do not provide such services, but seeing the expression on the girl's face, he immediately agreed. Leaving the tavern with a gift, Evie sighed heavily from the realization of how exhausted she had been over these 10 days. Looking at the gift, she noted what an expensive pleasure it was, because she spent all the money and didn't even leave any money to pay for the trip. Her father rode to the palace on horseback, and she had to walk there, so she was angry that the king was only making life much more difficult for people. Evie understood that even though the entrance to the palace was guarded by guards, getting in was not a problem for her. Not understanding what the girl was doing there, the guard clarified that His Majesty the King lived here. Noting that her father works here, Evie said that she misses him very much. In the end, she did it without even running into anyone else besides that security guard. She noted this as excellent because she understood that it would be better if they met in secret. Knowing that it was very empty here, she wondered if the king was tormented by conscience since he had abandoned him like that. Thinking that she was at least stronger than this damn king, Evie began to make her way through the bushes. She was very glad when she looked ahead and finally saw Charles. Looking at him, the girl could not understand whether he was engaged in photosynthesis or something else. Coming closer to the prince, the girl noted that if the book is left in the sun, it will fade. With a bright smile on her face, Evie greeted His Highness. She introduced herself again and apologized for her poor memory when Charles reminded her that this was no place for her kind. Understanding that the power and rights belonged to the king, the girl asked with a smile whether this was the exclusive territory of the prince. Deciding to take responsibility for her injury, the king attempted to strike his own son, showing unreasonable cruelty. And since the prince knows about his situation, he could do nothing about it. He didn't quite understand what she was talking about when the girl suddenly apologized, but she clarified that it was because of her that he had to face trouble. When the prince remarked that he did not understand what she meant, Evie informed him that in any case, she was back again, as she had said. He was very surprised and asked in bewilderment what it was when the girl happily handed him the gift. Evie initially said it was an apology gift, but realizing she had no reason to feel guilty, she said she was giving it as a token of friendship. She screamed in horror when the first prince suddenly threw out that very high-quality artifact. Rushing towards the gift, she lifted it from the ground with hands shaking with anger. Not quite addressing the prince with respect, the girl began to scream loudly about how heartless he was. Charles was not quite sure what was going on when Evie tearfully remarked that he could not even imagine how much the gift had cost. Relieved that the stone had retained its color, she informed him that it was a disposable item and he should handle it with care. Even though she was in a bad mood, she knew he was right when Charles asked how he could trust her. Evie's plan was to compensate for the lack of trust with a gift, but it failed, making the prince even more wary. With the thought that she had gone through 10 days of hell just to buy it, she tearfully reported that it was very difficult to get. Hanging her head, the girl noted that it seemed like today was not her day, and handed the gift straight into the boy's hands. He was very surprised when, after asking for forgiveness for coming uninvited, the girl said that it was an artifact for self-defense. Noting that it was not dangerous, Evie said with a smile that he would be able to protect himself if danger came. Looking at her, Charles immediately noticed the wound on her arm. Noting that in this case she was leaving, Evie said with a smile that she would return to him next time. She happily agreed when asked if she liked the food, although she herself thought that she was going to throw up, even though it was delicious. Not quite understanding what she was doing there, she said that she liked everything, when the king, noting that his son found no joy in such things, asked what she liked best. Tea with the king was spontaneous again, and she could not even imagine that she would again run into him sitting next to his father. Regardless of the guard's attention, it wasn't such a bad thing for Evie to gain the king's favor, since he was her father's boss after all. When the king asked the child how she had got to the palace without her dad, Evie was content to let him fall completely under her spell. Having learned that she had been walking nearby, the king suggested that she finish exploring the area, which Evie was pleasantly surprised by, as it was a good chance. Realizing it was time to lay the foundation, she noted that she remembered the garden from when she was lost last time, and her father explained that the garden was near a distant palace. With a smile on her face, Evie said that she really liked the atmosphere there, and she wants to go there again. Thinking she shouldn't have been there, the girl asked for forgiveness, but the king said there was no need. Having learned that she liked it there very much, the king informed her that there was only one way by which she could get there at any time. Hoping that he did not want to make her a gardener, she agreed that she had recently met the first prince. Evie's father was completely surprised and asked what she wanted to say when the king announced that she would be his bridesmaid. Noting that this was too much responsibility, the man said that his daughter was too young and reckless. He was in great surprise when Evie exclaimed with a smile that she agreed. After asking if he trusted her, the girl asked her dad to just rely on her. The king noted with a smile that he knew she would say that when the girl said she would do her best. Sometime later, Sanu turned to his sister and asked where she was going. He asked why she was dressed like she was going to a wedding when Evie said she was going to fight a dragon. The girl agreed when Sanu, remembering that she wanted to meet the first prince today, asked if this was such an important event as a wedding. Evie began to scream menacingly about how she would kiss him 1,000,000 times as punishment when her brother told her to keep her mouth shut. Noting that it was a great honor for her to meet the prince, Evie introduced herself again. She was quite surprised when the prince, noting that it was ostentatious, suggested that they drop the formalities. Evie noticed that there was almost no furniture in the reception area and not a single piece of cake, and Charles reported that, although he had doubts, she seemed to be his companion. When she agreed with a smile and said that she took everything because she did not know what he would like, the prince suddenly said that he had not given permission to sit down. While angry at how petty he was being, Evie noted that forming relationships with peers was a vital part of the action. When the prince, perplexed, said that he did not want to argue with her anymore and ordered her to pack up and leave, the girl noted that his character was very difficult. Turning around, she noted that being friends means learning new things about each other. She said she knew this when the boy noted that the door was on the other side. Charles didn't know what to say when Evie pointed out that he himself had told her to turn around and leave. Climbing onto the window, the girl, trying not to offend anyone, said goodbye to the prince with a smile. She was very surprised when, shouting for her to stop, Charles grabbed her leg. When the prince started shouting about whether she was in her right mind, a surprised Evie asked why he had changed his mind so suddenly. The prince sighed heavily and remarked on how orders could be taken so literally, and the girl said that it was important for them to build trust. When he exclaimed in surprise, not understanding what trust she was talking about, Evie noted with a smile about the belief that she would carry out all his orders. He was very surprised when, after his words that such behavior was unacceptable for a noble lady, the girl said that she was not noble. Dane de Laffion had previously saved the king's life during the war, and in gratitude was rewarded with a title and mansion, as well as being made a knight. Evie revealed that she was the daughter of a duke from a former barony, and that she was an inferior aristocrat. Hanging his head, the first prince noted that His Majesty was trying to humiliate him in any way possible. When the girl asked him why he thought so, he asked in bewilderment if she was really that stupid. He said that he was teasing him because he had become the companion of a person of the opposite sex, and a commoner at that. At the same time, the boy noted that she didn't even have a safety cushion, and if she suffered because of him, it wouldn't cause any trouble for His Majesty. Charles clarified that she had become his companion simply because of the circumstances, and the girl said that perhaps that was indeed the case. When the prince asked if she cared, Evie said she was okay with it because she had a prince. She said she was not interested in such political battles when the prince pointed out that she was greatly mistaken if she hoped to win his favor. Charles was greatly perplexed when he learned that her goal was world peace. Not understanding what was so confusing about this, Evie said that love and peace are basic human values. He asked if he had to have a reason for this when the girl asked if this meant he didn't want her to be his companion. When Evie informed him that he could speak directly to the king if he didn't like it, the prince sighed heavily. Thinking that this was just the beginning, Evie smiled and said that she hoped that they would get along. Turning to the prince with a smile, she shouted that Cutie Evie was already here. Hearing a positive answer to the question of whether he had slept well, the girl realized that he was in high spirits. He ordered her to put it away when Evie offered him macarons, and Evie realized that despite his best efforts, his wariness had not abated. When the prince asked why she had brought the flavors she did not like, the girl replied that he might like them. The food in the palace left much to be desired, but he does not touch other people's food. After asking if he got a headache from all the reading, Evie smiled and said she had brought something more cheerful. During this time, she managed to find out that the first prince had no servants or teachers, and, in other words, he was completely abandoned. Not understanding how he learned everything, Evie understood that he read all day long and could ruin his eyes, posture, and nervous system. She didn't find it surprising that he lacked social skills, since he spent all day at home with his nose in a book. The boy was quite surprised when Evie turned to him and informed him that he still hadn't told him his name. She clarified that she had introduced herself on the first day of their meeting, and accordingly, he should too. Evie was quite surprised when the prince revealed that his name was Charles Legracio. He clarified that it was an average name for a person from the royal family, and it didn't make sense, because no one would call him that anyway. Evie knew that the family didn't call him by his name and that regular people wouldn't be able to either, so she said that she could. Thinking that status was not important to her at all, she asked with a smile if she could call him by his first name. Charles was very surprised by this question and did not understand why she wanted this. When she began repeating his name over and over again, he said that he felt uncomfortable and asked her to call him by his old name. He said that wasn't the case when Evie suggested that he try to like his name a little more. When he asked how long she was going to hang around there, the girl said that she would stay there until he started to think she was cute. Noting that it is common to find people cute, Evie said she thinks everyone thinks she is cute. She started screaming that she was very upset that the prince didn't feel anything now when he saw her. Charles, with horror, said that this would not happen. When Evie said that he would definitely find her pretty, then his soul would be refreshed. When the girl remarked that she would melt his icy heart no matter what, the prince was amazed by her confidence. He was very surprised when she told him that he didn't have any friends except him anyway, but she reassured him that it was quite normal. When the boy asked in confusion who said he was her friend, Evie said that perhaps they would become closer after they played, but naturally, Charles did not play with her. She was very surprised when her brother turned to her and asked if she was leaving again. Hanging his head, Sanu noted that lately she had been going to the palace every day and not playing with him at all. When he tearfully asked if she could play with him today, Evie realized that her little Sanu was used to acting very grown up. Thinking that nothing would happen if she didn't visit the prince for a day, Evie agreed to have fun with him. In the end, it turned out to be not one day, but a week. Because all her money was gone, because all her expenses turned out to be more than she expected. Before her father received the title, they were an ordinary family, so they couldn't have a carriage. She could walk as before, but she did not want to waste her strength and energy just on movement. She was very angry that the king could not provide transportation for his son's companion, but she understood that if he had realized his responsibilities, he would never have locked his son up. Thinking that if they were of high rank, they would never have been treated with such disrespect, she cursed the king. Despite this, Evie could not understand what was going on in Charles's head. She knew that although he would become a big shot in a few years, he was just a kid now. Remembering that when she came to him she was ignored, she was horrified that she only remembered the bad moments. She also understood that he was just a boy with countless scars, and the level of his caustic nature was completely unpredictable. With the thought that time reigned over everything, she chuckled at the fact that her incredible beauty would melt him anyway. Assuming that she wanted to go to the palace so badly, Sanu offered to lend her some money that he had saved from what his father gave him when he was drunk. The girl was very surprised that he saved them all, because even she did not have the same financial literacy as her 8-year-old brother. She told him to continue saving money, because if she had nowhere to get it from, she would ask him. She didn't quite understand what her brother meant when Sanu suddenly made a certain suggestion. Sometime later, she was in a huge bookstore on a busy street with Sanu, urging him to trust her. As a sister, she couldn't let her brother wander alone, and looking at him, she realized that it seemed strangely familiar to her. Listening to her brother's lectures, she asked him to behave in a manner appropriate to his age, because she did not understand what could happen. But something did happen, and she came running to the sound of the child's scream, seeing a large number of men there getting him. Horrified, she told them with an awkward smile to take care of themselves, but a man appeared behind her and asked where she was going. Assuming he didn't know who she was, she said she would ignore his disrespect if he left her. When the man suggested that he was some kind of princess, Evie sighed heavily and said that she really didn't want to drag her father into this. The men standing nearby immediately began to whisper that he might really be a princess, and began to come up with a new plan. She was delighted to realize that they were idiots for believing her, when suddenly one of them started shouting that this kingdom didn't even have a princess. Even though she had promised her father that she would never stain her hands with blood again, she had no choice now. A little later, the boy she had saved thanked her, noting that he did not know how to thank her. Speaking of those same kidnappers, the two of them called the guards to deal with them. The same boy noted that at first he thought she was trying to escape, but her goal turned out to be to lower their guard. After his question about why she was so strong, and finding out that she was taller than him, he suddenly started to talk about why she was talking to him like that, but decided to forgive her since she saved him. When she said she was leaving if he finished talking, he suddenly asked her to take something. Noting that the current situation left much to be desired, he said that this was all he could give her and asked her to accept it as a token of gratitude. Looking down, Evie was in great surprise when she saw a ruby brooch in her hands. She said that it would be foolish to refuse and asked why he was giving her such a precious gift. The stranger said that with the help of this thing she could always recognize him, and when they met, he would definitely repay her properly. After leaving the store, Sanu asked his sister if everything was okay. Hugging him tightly and noting which of them should still be worried, Evie asked if he had bought everything he needed. After hearing a positive answer, the sister said that before going home, they had to go somewhere. Even though they had inherited the title, she was tired of dealing with people like that, especially since she knew that the stranger hadn't even shown his face. Entering the jewelry store, Evie happily shouted out that she wanted to sell something. Sometime later, she entered the room and called out to His Majesty with a smile. She was very surprised that he had been there all this time, and Charles was quite surprised to see her. When he asked, puzzled, if she thought it was her backyard, the girl smiled and said that she would like that. Evie said that he couldn't even imagine how much effort this trip cost her, that she couldn't even describe it. When she started talking about the cookies she had brought, Charles, gritting his teeth, began to talk about how she came when she was thinking, but never came when she was needed. Hearing this, the girl was very surprised, and turning to him with a smile, asked if he missed her. With a smile on her face, Evie said that she missed him too, although she knew that if she had said it earlier, she would have gotten a pillow thrown at her. When she suggested that he was upset when she didn't come, the prince informed her that she only heard what she wanted to hear. Noticing that this was some kind of progress, she announced that she was going to the founding festival with her brother and father, and they were going to have fun. She said that no matter how much she liked the prince, she could not attend every minor event. When the prince threw a pillow at her, yelling at her to get out of there, Evie reminded her that she shouldn't throw things at people. He said that this had never happened before, when the girl noted that she might be in pain. When she started asking questions about what would happen if she got hurt and whether he would be happy if she didn't come to the palace, the girl wondered if that would really be the case. She asked him if he knew how much she had worked to meet him as soon as possible. Embarrassed, Charles asked with great awkwardness why she hadn't come then. He asked her to get to the point when, after thinking for a moment, she began to talk about the difficulties she faced every day. When she said she had no money, he told her to tell everything from the beginning. Evie said that she didn't have the money to pay for a cart here, and although rich families had carts, they weren't so lucky. When the boy pointed out that her father was a palace knight, the girl said that they had one horse and that her father used it. The prince was horrified when she also noted that she had to travel on public transport, which was always packed with people. When Charles learned that public transportation had to be paid for and that she had no money left because she had to pay for it every day, he hung his head. He was even more horrified when she walked alone from her house to the palace. Hanging his head again, he assumed that she always traveled alone, since she had no one to accompany her. Realizing that she had ruined his mood, Evie suggested going outside, noting that the sun was shining brightly there. Noting that he might become depressed if he didn't see it, she suggested with a bright smile that they go to that place with lush trees. Refusing, Charles told her to follow him, which surprised Evie greatly. Sometime later, when they came to the stables, Evie did not understand why they were there, when the boy noted that this stable was used by servants from time to time. Having said that the prince's horse was there, he said that he had heard that royal children were given a horse for their 10th birthday. Seeing his horse, the heroine noted to herself that it was in the servant's stable, but he still took great care of it. Noting that she could borrow it, Charles told her not to even think about giving it up later. Evie was greatly surprised when she realized that he wanted to lend her his horse, and the boy noted that he even had a name. When the heroine asked why he was lending the royal horse to her, the prince replied that it would be wrong of him to have his companion ride in a public carriage. Dodging the question of whether he considered her a friend, Charles clarified that despite his opinion, people would think that she was. He said he didn't say that when the girl started asking him if it meant he was worried about her. Without giving him a chance to say anything, after she told him that only he could criticize her, Evie thanked him with a bright smile. Assuming that this was what it felt like to raise a child, she suddenly announced that she couldn't ride a horse. Thinking that she was already tired of sitting on the sofa all the time, Evie happily shouted that the prince was quite good at controlling the horse. He was very good for a self-taught person, especially one who learned everything by reading books about horse riding. Charles noted that she might fall when, thinking that they were going out for some fresh air, she exclaimed happily. When the girl noted that she would not die anyway, the prince discontentedly reported that despite this, it would still cause trouble. Looking ahead, Evie asked what was ahead of them, and Charles said that he himself did not know what it was since he had never been there. Evie immediately offered to go there, but looking at her, Charles asked if she would take responsibility. Disagreeing, Evie said she wanted to tell them both to be punished, but she soon regretted her actions. Walking along the long corridor, the girl noted that she did not know that there was such a place in the palace. Looking at the prince, she realized that he looked quite excited, like a man visiting a greenhouse for the first time. She was in great surprise when the boy suddenly announced that he had never traveled so far and had never left the outbuilding. Evie found it very cute that the child did not even dare to touch the flowers, but only watched them. It was hard for her to believe that one day he would cut out the noble families, but she still would not allow him to do it. After all, if everything continues in this spirit, then everything will end well, and with a little effort, she will be able to turn him into an ordinary person. Evie was amazed when she raised her head and saw the only queen, Pelcia Legracio, standing before her. The dissatisfied queen noted that this rubbish spoiled the entire landscape. The girl could not understand why they met it right now. Having greeted Her Majesty, she realized that the queen was not even looking in her direction, and if she ran away, no one would even notice her. Telling him again not to stand there, the queen noted that the blood of his despicable mother was corrupting him. With a tremor in her body, Charles immediately apologized while Evie was horrified that she was saying such a thing. Realizing that it was perfectly normal for the prince to stroll around his own home, Evie realized that she was starting a fight over nothing. Saying that even though he had been given a place, he was becoming more and more impudent, the queen said that people like him were ruining the family's prestige. Noting that he didn't seem to realize it, the woman said that it was her duty as the elder to teach him. At that moment, Evie wondered who the first prince was and realized that he was the one who had been treated coldly throughout his childhood and became the main villain of the novel. She worked hard to soften him up and couldn't understand why they were doing this to a child who was just starting to get on his feet. When the queen told her that a man of low birth could never be changed, the girl was full of anger at her because he was not the one to blame. Stepping forward, Evie apologized for not greeting her sooner and greeted Her Majesty. The Empress was quite surprised, and the girl said that her name was Evie de la Fionn, and it was a great honor for her to meet the queen. Noting that the palace was so beautiful that she had not noticed how she had come there, the girl offered her deepest apologies. The queen smirked contentedly when the little girl said that she was still very glad to see her, even though she had been a little rude. Evie began to talk about how she was very interested in her because Her Majesty looked very much like a princess. When the Empress remarked that she was quite funny, Evie said that this was a very precious moment for her, and she would definitely write about it in her diary. It's been a few days since Evie's tearful talk show, and the national festival has finally begun. Although Charles had never looked out the window before, for some reason he now acquired this habit, thinking that they were probably having fun there now. Evie, with a smile on her face, told him that they sold masks made of paper or leather, as well as Southern cuisine. Remembering her, it really irritated Charles, but he knew she didn't mean to tease him or anything like that. He understood that it could not be that she was staying with him out of the kindness of her heart, and that she must definitely have some motive, thinking about it over and over again, and waiting days and nights for Evie to reveal her true intentions. He tried to stay alert and not let his guard down, waiting for her to take off her mask and start making fun of him. At that very moment, a joyful Evie entered the room and immediately turned on the light. A surprised Charles noted that he was planning to go to the festival when the girl asked why he was sitting in the dark without even turning on the nightlight. He asked in bewilderment how she had entered when the girl happily declared that she had had a great time. When the boy learned that she had entered through the door at such a late hour, he was surprised when Evie suddenly announced that the moon was still high and they decided to have a fireworks show. He asked in bewilderment why he needed this information when the girl remarked on how wonderful it was that they were wasting tax money. I extended my hand to Evie and smiled, suggesting that we go watch the fireworks together. When he said it was too sweet, the girl said she was still very glad he tried it right away. Even though she was 2 years younger than him, Charles understood that this little troublemaker was talking to him like a younger brother. Asking him if he liked them, Evie said with a smile that they were very tasty and sweet, and children love sweets the most. This fact greatly disturbed Charles, because if she really planned to kill him, then this moment could be an excellent opportunity. After tasting the strawberries, which Evie was very happy about, the boy reported that they were terribly sweet. It was so sweet to him that his tongue went numb, but he continued eating it anyway. When the boy asked where her father and brother were, she said that they were now somewhere together. Realizing that he always acted like he knew everything, Evie asked him if he was interested in how she got there, but he said he didn't care. Asking him if he was interested in how the guards had let her in at such a late hour, the girl happily informed him that such cosmic prettiness made people relax their vigilance. He clarified that she meant that the knights were taken aback when Evie started talking about how people couldn't miss something beautiful. The boy was quite surprised when Evie announced that she was about to show him something funny. When asked what it was, she said that she had been saving up her allowance specifically and had put all her effort into it. Turning to him, putting on a frightening mask on her face, she shouted joyfully. Noting that it was monstrous, Charles asked why she was doing this, but the girl simply asked him to be patient for a little while. He couldn't understand why he had to give in, but Evie informed him that the game was incredibly popular. When the prince asked why she wore this particular mask, the girl said that he too should know what it was about. Charles couldn't understand why she was so good at it when Evie started acting out the scene that had taken place at the festival. Looking at her with bewilderment, he could not understand how she could sing without accompaniment. Charles understood that an aristocrat, hardly distinguishable from a commoner, would not show kindness just like that, especially to such an extent. It no longer mattered to him what her goal was, because he understood that he was not worthy of such dedication. Even his own parents wanted him dead and played cheap tricks, and Evie didn't have to try so hard. Not understanding why she was behaving this way, the idea suddenly arose in his head that this was the last bit of his father's love. Having decided that this was impossible, Charles understood that all the same, when she was with him, he was not bored. Evie herself was just thinking about how tired you get from playing with children, because you have to be prepared for anything. Understanding that children are delicate and fragile creatures, she decided that this is why she could fearlessly deal with the future genius. But she also knew that children were delicate and easily hurt, so wounds received now could leave scars. When she asked His Highness if he had enjoyed himself, Charles awkwardly informed her that it had indeed been interesting. He found it funny when Evie told him that she had watched the show and tried to memorize it in detail until her eyes nearly fell out. When the girl informed him that she was acting it out in front of him because he was the first prince and her performances were not cheap, Charles was surprised to learn that it was supposed to be a dance. With the thought that he might have shown some tolerance for her sloppy sewing, Evie was very disappointed that she couldn't dispel his bad memories. When the girl noted that it was the first time she had seen fireworks so close, the boy agreed with her. Hoping that he would also find her cute, Evie asked him to enjoy it while he could and his sense of beauty would improve. When Evelyn reported that her entire family was busy, Charles inquired about her mother, and she reported that her mother was very far away. After hearing his apologies and condolences, Evie said that everything was fine because he didn't know. When Charles pointed out that his mother was also in a very distant place, the girl realized that there had been a misunderstanding. Realizing that there is nothing more terrible than a child who has lost her mother and is forgotten by her father, Evie noted that she does not have any attachment to her mother as such, because she does not remember anything. When the boy said that this pity was unnecessary, she asked him if he missed his mother, to which he replied in the negative. Evie knew that if she dug into his soul, she could pretend to share his feelings and reassure him. Having said that she understood him, the girl noted with a smile that she was nearby. After that meeting with the Queen, Charles flatly refused to cross the border of the remote palace, but he still did not refuse to give riding lessons. He asked her in bewilderment to say something sensible at least once when the girl said that she wanted to jump already. When she started to say that everything was fine, after his words about her forgetting his methods, Charles asked her to shut her mouth and do what he said. Noting that she was more or less used to it, Evie suggested that they gallop, and the prince noted that it would be spectacular if she broke her head. The girl agreed with a smile when the guy noted that although she was learning faster than he had expected, she was still not galloping. When he pointed out that she was no faster at learning than he was, Evie pointed out that comparison was the root of all problems. Charles knew she was strong and not afraid of heights, so she could cope better than most. When the boy pointed out that the offer of a horse still stood, Evie asked what the point of riding would be if the prince wasn't around. Happy that he looked much healthier, the girl agreed that they had gone far away and suggested that they return. Realizing that he immediately wanted to turn back as soon as they approached the greenhouse, Evie decided to change the subject. The prince immediately asked the reason when she told him that she would not be able to visit him for some time. He asked the question again when the girl, with tears in her eyes, began to talk about how he would certainly feel empty and miss her. His surprise knew no bounds when she told him that she would be meeting with friends for the first time in a long time. She told him that there were no real friends present at this meeting, but she could not miss this event. When asked what kind of meeting this was, Evie explained that it was a small public gathering where children whose fathers were knights in the kingdom would come, and there she would be treated as a commoner. When the prince suggested that she simply not go, the girl explained that if she did not go, rumors might start. Understanding that she was very worried about him, Evie asked him to think about her before she arrived and not to close himself off, which surprised the boy very much. Sitting in the carriage, the girl's father repeated over and over again how she should behave. When he pointed out that there was no need to worry because they were all good children, the girl realized how trusting he was. With a smirk on her face, she asked him who he thought she was. He said that was not the point at all when she proudly declared that she would defeat them all. Sometime later, taking off her gloves, a certain lady loudly shouted that she was challenging Delafion to a duel. This was approximately the extent of his trust in his daughter, and, as expected, his insight was truly exceptional. As always, there was nothing special about this meeting, and all the nobles were smiling and discussing various topics, while everyone treated Evie with indifference. Noting that she was quite modest, the children began to discuss the fact that her dress resembled the dresses of their maids. This meeting was no different from the previous one, and she just sat quietly, not paying attention to them. At that very moment, the conversation turned to her parents, and the children began to discuss how simple they were. One of the children looked with horror at the fork that Evie had crushed, saying that she had simply imagined wringing his neck. When she told him to shut up unless he wanted the same thing to happen to his wrist, one of the ladies remarked that this was too much. The boy immediately hid behind her, and the lady said that as his fiancé, she could not let her get away with such rudeness. She immediately couldn't stand such a provocation when Evie, asking what she would do to her, suggested that she would run to complain to her parents. Evie watched with a smirk as the girl took off her gloves and announced that she was challenging her to a duel. At that moment, she promised herself that she would not let this meeting end in someone getting hurt, but it was not she who started the mess. Thinking that a true warrior does not know what retreat is, Evie agreed to fight with a smile. Having agreed to fight in a week, Evie also learned that their parents were in different orders and would not be able to do anything. When the lady asked if she would run away, Evie, telling her not to worry, asked her to make sure that she herself would not chicken out and accept the challenge. Charles asked not to change the subject when, in response to his question about who she had fought, Evelyn asked if he had enjoyed the treats. Hearing that they weren't so bad made Evie happy, because now he was happily swallowing the candies. Upon learning that she was fighting Cardell Lucius, the prince revealed that she was from a family of counts, and was surprised to realize that Evie did not know this at all. The guy told her that Cardell was well known for having inherited her mother's talent for fencing, and even he knew about it. When the girl remarked that this was the first time she had heard of duels being held in their time, Charles informed her that they were not held the same way as before. Evie immediately joked that she had read too many knightly novels, but the prince explained that Carol had gotten too excited because she would soon be entering a knightly academy. He reminded her that she was 10 herself when Evie started talking about how she hadn't been accepted yet and was only 13 years old. Assuming he was worried about her, the girl said she never picked fights she couldn't win when Charles pointed out that she could have gotten hurt. When he pointed out that she had just lost, Evie pointed out that chess and fighting were two completely different things. Evie thought it would take a lot longer, but things are going much better than expected. Charles was very surprised to learn that Evie had never even picked up a sword, but she said that it was not necessary to fight with swords. The prince understood perfectly well that she was strong and, noting this, said that one still needed to know how to fence. Noting that this might be true, Evie said with a smile that only weak people said that. On the day of the duels, on the training ground of the palace, the parents of both children silently listened to the discussions of the others. When Cardelia's mother noted that she never thought such a day would ever come, Evie's father pointed out that raising a daughter is not easy. He had already spoken to her, and she had informed him that she was not going to beat her half to death, but he couldn't help but worry. Cardell didn't understand if she was trying to humiliate her when asked where her sword was, Evie smiled and said that it wasn't there. When the lady said that she, Cardell Lucius, swears on her name that she will fight in the duel, Evie asked if she should swear too. She clarified that her family were commoners and were not knights, so she did not understand whose honor she needed to defend. Cardell said that if Evie loses, she will apologize for disrespect, and if she wins, she will apologize. Thinking about how she had stood silently while her friends insulted her family, Evie refused her apology with horror on her face. Evie said that if she wins, she will take something from her, and if Cardell wins, she can do whatever she wants. Noting that she just needed to win, Evie asked with a terrifying smile if she was scared. Cardell immediately began to shout that she swears on the honor of her count's family that she will give her everything she wants. Her mother, hearing this, was in great surprise, and Evie reported that her conditions were the same. When the fight began, Cardell, full of anger, said that she would regret it, and Evelyn agreed with her with a smirk. Evie understood that the rules were simple, and the match ended when someone gave up or someone stepped out of the boundary zones. Cordelia was amazed when, after she ran up to Evie, the girl immediately jumped up. After hitting her, Evie noted that she was holding up much better than she thought. Thinking that she was quite determined and she would remind her of this when she became a villain, Evie snatched the sword from her hands. Cordelia was amazed when, thinking that no one cared about technology, the girl grabbed her hands. Knowing that all that mattered was that she could dominate her, Evie sent the lady flying. Everyone watched in horror as Cardell flew right over the designated border. While Evie's father was in complete despair, the judge loudly announced that the winner was Lady Abby de Lafion. She asked in bewilderment since when a fight was considered a sacred event, when, in response to her question about whether she was okay, Cardell began to talk in bewilderment about how she dared to do such a thing in a sacred duel. When the girl started saying that the duel shouldn't go like this, Evie said that she didn't care, because rules are rules. Noting that promises are promises, Cardell asked what she wanted. She was completely horrified when Evie, with horror on her face, told her to give her sword here. When Cardell said that this sword was passed down through generations and that she should not ask for such things, the heroine asked whether it was worthy of her to be beaten. The girl immediately reported that she had disgraced her fiancé, but Evie clarified that she remained silent when her fiancé spoke about her family. Evie said she wasn't asking to take her side, but since she just stood there and let it happen, she lost the right to speak when their roles were reversed. When Cardell hung her head and said that she had actually threatened him, the girl suggested that it be considered karma. At that very moment, the parents ran up to their children, and Evie's father began asking the girl if she was okay. Evie's father was shocked when he asked her why she was holding a sword, the girl smiled and said that it was her trophy. When he noted that this sword could be very important to Lady Lucius, the heroine said that this made the victory even more pleasant. As the little girl continued to hover around her mother with tears in her eyes, Miss de Lafion informed her that she must answer for her words. She cast an angry glance at her daughter and asked if she thought it was okay to sell her family's name so easily. When Cardell, her voice shaking, said that this was not what she had meant, her mother said that she must give the scabbard to Miss de Lafion in person. Noting that a promise was a promise, the girl handed her the scabbard with trembling hands. The prince, upon learning everything, could not believe that she had actually won, but Evie informed him that it was easy and took less than 5 minutes. She agreed when the boy clarified that she had said she had never done fencing. When he asked how she had managed to win, the girl noted that he was gradually losing his vigilance. The prince clarified what exactly she wanted to know when she asked about what was the basis for fencing. He was quite surprised when, noting that the basis of fencing was the sword, Evie informed him that he simply needed to take it. When he told her to get to the point, the girl smiled and said that she had simply dropped it. She agreed when the horrified boy, after a moment of silence, asked whether she was even human. When the boy asked if she was a bear, Evie said that she could act like a bear if he wanted her to. She clarified that bears are ferocious, have a good appetite, and are good at climbing trees. When asked how they were different from her, Evie, with a horrified look, said that bears tear people to pieces. Noting that the bears weren't bad, she asked if she would prefer something small and cute. The prince was completely perplexed to hear that something small and cute suited her better, but she again confirmed this with a sweet look. She couldn't understand how such a face could not be cute when Charles informed her that she was neither small nor cute. At this point, Evie was very pleased that everything had become much better and she would have to hold out with him like this for a couple more years. But life doesn't always go as they planned. After asking if she was Lady Delafion, the maid reported that Her Majesty the Queen was calling for her. Evie knew that the first prince did not even have the right to decide whether to send his guest or not, but she could not understand why the Queen would want to see her. When she turned to the prince, Charles, with an awkward smile, informed her that since this was Her Majesty's order, she should hurry. Evie smiled and said she enjoyed playing with the prince when the Queen began to talk about how at her age she should spend more time with the girls. She couldn't understand why she had called her when the Queen had repeated again that it was much better to spend time with girls. Her Majesty clarified that although he may not know it, childhood friends often become lifelong friends. She was very surprised when Evie smiled and said that she knew it wasn't true. Evie was just a small fry that could be crushed in the hands of a fully grown first prince. But it will be a completely different story if a small fry like her remains on his side for more than 10 years. The girl did not quite understand what was being discussed when Her Majesty suddenly noted that the conversation should go easily. The Queen said that a person should only associate with those with whom he is truly compatible. Noting that Evie is much kinder and more soft-hearted than her peers, she noted that in her eyes she is an exceptional child. With great awkwardness, the girl said that she understood this when the Queen said that against this background, her status became almost shameful. When the woman asked if the first prince was really worthy of being her friend, Evie was in great surprise. She knew it was all her fault when the Queen started talking about how ill-mannered he was. Evie knew that it was the king and queen who abandoned the child in a remote palace and did not even provide a servant. Noting that she was perhaps too young to understand that this was a terrible disrespect, the Queen noted that Sir Delafion would certainly be upset. When she told him that if she were him, she would never have sent her to the palace, Evie realized that this woman had no idea about her father's character. Her father is a man who doesn't mind her rummaging around the mansion, even if it ends up in a mess. The Queen smirked contentedly when, not understanding why she had mentioned her father, Evie asked what she should do in that case. The girl was in great surprise when the Queen announced that she would introduce her to a friend who was more suitable for her. The woman said that her nephew was staying at the palace for a short time, and since he had a gentle nature and a sharp mind, she was sure that they would get along. Realizing that this was an exorbitant offer for a child with nothing behind her, Evie awkwardly revealed that she was quite ordinary. Suddenly, the Queen remembered the duel and noted that Evie had defeated Countess Lucas, despite the fact that she was a famous swordswoman. The woman noted that not everyone is given such courage and she really likes it. Not understanding why she kept talking about childhood fights, Evie awkwardly said that she needed to consult with her father. She thought about it the whole next day but couldn't find an answer as to how she could refuse. With thoughts of focusing on matters of primary importance, Evie called out to the prince with a loud cry. Now she had to stay with the first prince, and she was surprised not to find him in the library. Having run through many rooms and continuing to call for the prince, she realized that he was nowhere to be found. With the realization that there was one room left she could enter, Evie realized that the boy had slammed the doors again. Standing in front of the room, she couldn't understand what could have changed in just one day. It seemed that from that day on, Charles decided to hide from everyone properly, and knocks on the door, shouts, and even attempts to bribe with food remained in vain. Seeing his sister's depressed state, Sanu asked if she was upset that she could not go to the palace because of the rain. He asked if she was in her right mind when the girl remarked that even no rain would stop her from going there. When Evie asked in horror who had taught him to speak so brazenly, the boy said it was her. Upon learning that the prince would not meet her even if she came, Sanu told her not to go there in that case. He didn't understand why their family had to suffer such losses without receiving anything in return, but Evie smiled and noted that there were enough reasons. When he suggested that she wanted to use the prince for land speculation, Evie noted with bewilderment that she was only 10. The two of them were very surprised when they were informed that a package had arrived for Evie from Lady Cardell Lucius. When Sanu asked if she had accidentally hit her on the head during the duel, the girl said that this had not happened. Evie thought it was an offer of revenge, but was very surprised when she saw about 100 roses in front of her with an apology card. When she noted that Cardell had only just realized how sweet she was, Sanu asked in bewilderment how someone who risked herself could be considered sweet. The boy was extremely surprised when his sister suddenly announced that she had to go to the palace no matter what. When he reminded her that the prince didn't even want to see her, Evie calmly said that conflicts should be resolved early on. He was absolutely horrified and reminded her that the murder of a member of the royal family was punishable by death when his sister informed him that he must see it through to the end. Remembering how the cart broke down and she got there on foot, Evie tried to think that nothing terrible had happened. In fact, a lot had happened and she was terribly exhausted and even more soaking wet. Leaving wet footprints as she made her way towards the prince's room, she began to tell him how she got there. Not understanding why he was acting this way, Evie simply asked him to tell her the reason. Understanding that a decision had been made and she needed to cross an invisible line, she announced that she would do it her way too. She was ready to do as she pleased, so she immediately hit the door and opened it. Her surprise knew no bounds when, as soon as she entered the room, the prince immediately ran up to her with a shard in his hand. With a quick movement of her hand, she threw away the shard and continued to look at it in horror. When she turned to the prince questioningly, he continued to speak quietly, trembling, about how he had done everything as he was told. He kept talking about her not coming because he didn't want to die at all. He immediately fell to the floor when the girl began to come closer, while she herself did not understand who he took her for. Turning to him, she informed him that Evie de Laffion was standing in front of him, which surprised the prince greatly. When Evie answered his question about why she had come and said that she was his companion, the prince began to talk about how she would also leave him. Realizing that now was not the time for general phrases, the girl asked him why he thought she was here. Charles immediately started screaming that it was probably out of pity, and she was wondering what state he was in now. When she asked why she should feel sorry for him, the boy said that the queen had told him everything, and she could not deny it. He told her that she must understand that for a locked-in prince there is no such thing as hope. After telling her not to pretend that she cared about him, Charles told her to get out of there right now. When Evie asked whether she should walk back home in the rain after she had come all that way, and also said that she wouldn't have come if that was really the reason, he said that wasn't what he meant. Asking how long she would treat him like a fool, Charles revealed that the queen had informed him that she would soon cease to be his companion. Even though Evie said that wasn't the case, he continued to talk about how everything had been weird from the start. Continuing to listen to her about how she wanted to use him as a support, Evie screamed loudly and said to at least listen to her. She started screaming that she herself could have been asked about this, because she came here day after day and he did not talk to her. Having said that she was not going anywhere, Evie asked with a loud cry where she should go since the prince was here. When the prince began to talk about what the queen had told him, Evie was very angry at how she could deceive children. Evie said that it was a deception and that she was only interested in the prince, because if she wanted wealth, she would not have abandoned the count's daughter like that. When the prince noted this as true, the girl continued to say that his family members had nothing better to do if they came to inject the child. He noted her unpleasant tone when, after his words about him not being little, Evie clarified that the prince was a respected 12-year-old. When Evie learned that all the light bulbs were broken and that he had used candles, she asked permission to open the curtains, thinking that the servants' quarters did not look so bad. Grabbing her arm, Charles immediately stopped her and told her to just leave him alone. After saying she would leave, Evie merely apologized for barging in. When the prince noted the broken door, the girl said that he had voluntarily locked it, so they could be considered even. She said that he needed to be told properly when the prince started talking about how she should have just left if there was no answer. When asked what he should have said, Evie said that he should have said that he no longer wished to see her and that she should not come to him again. When the girl clarified that he would have needed to clarify this anyway, Charles assumed that his opinion would not have been taken into account anyway. Evie said that if he had told her, she wouldn't have wasted her time and frozen in the rain. She knew that this child could become a villain in the future, but she also understood that he was the one who was being subjected to such unfounded malice. Thinking that it was not at all surprising that dark thoughts could arise in such a garbage dump where one lantern was not lit, Evie turned to the prince. She knew she had to have at least one source of light. When she asked him if he was afraid of the rain, Charles answered in the negative. The boy asked if she was scared too, when Evie, after asking if it was true, noted that during a thunderstorm, the ground shook from loud sounds. He got angry and replied that he wasn't afraid either, when the girl said that she was brave and wasn't afraid of such things. She didn't understand what was wrong with being a little afraid of something, but Charles kept insisting that he wasn't afraid. Despite the words spoken, they both trembled terribly, looking at how dark it was in the room. The old furniture creaked, and it seemed that something was about to appear, which frightened Evie very much. When she turned to His Majesty with horror on her face, he again began to repeat that he was not afraid. Noting that this was not the case at all, the girl asked with a frightened look whether there were ghosts here. Charles, strangely calm, watched in bewilderment as Evie ran around the room screaming. Even though he asked her to calm down, she did not stop screaming and even started calling for her dad. When he asked in bewilderment what the blanket had to do with it, the girl threw it over herself and called him to her. She continued to ask if there were any ghosts here, and Charles reported that upon seeing such a sight, they all ran away. He started yelling about how she didn't even let him explain when Evie pointed out that he could have said something about it earlier. When Evie began to say that this was why he was afraid of her, the boy said that she had misheard. Noting that he was fine, the girl clarified that, at the very least, she was not abandoning him. Realizing that someone had been hurt, she clarified that it was a duel, so it didn't count. When the prince asked when she was going home, she said that it would definitely not be now. Noting that she had reported to her father that she had reached the palace, Evie clarified that she would remain here until he arrived. A little later, her father came and, despite all the prince's contradictions, began to clean up his room. Evie was absolutely horrified when her father asked the prince if she had caused him any serious problems. When the prince reported that nothing of the sort had happened, Evie's father breathed a sigh of relief. After thanking her for keeping his daughter company, the man said they were leaving, and Evie noted that she would be back tomorrow. Charles waved them off as Evie thought that the problem that had been plaguing her had been solved much more easily than she had thought. The queen listened in horror to Evie's apologies, saying that she was very grateful, but could not stop being the first prince's companion. Her father informed her that she could do as she saw fit, as it would not dishonor their family in any case. When he remarked that he thought she liked the first prince, the girl said that he was a handsome man and that you wouldn't find people like him anywhere. The queen noted that they had become quite close when, with the thought that her father would not mind, Evie announced that she would continue to be a friend to the first prince. When she remarked on the wonderful thing about having a friend, the girl smiled and said that she was very happy and thanked her for her understanding. Just when she thought that the queen could be forgotten, a new problem arose. She asked in bewilderment that she had caught her and not seen her, when Lady Cardell smiled and said that she was very glad to see her again. She noted that her reaction was rather strange when asked what brought her there, Cardell said that she was wondering if she had received roses. The lady exclaimed that she definitely got them when Evie noted that she still wouldn't give her the sword back. When she asked if she had hit her head hard during the duel, the girl said that there were no serious injuries. Turning to Evie, the girl said that in recent days she had been thinking a lot about why she lost. Evie asked for clarification when she started talking about being arrogant, but after getting to know her better, she realized it. When she noted that she was talking about the reason for her defeat, Evie clarified that she simply outclassed her in brute strength. Cardell began to deny and say that everything was not so simple, so the heroine reported that she used a technique that she herself did not know about. Her surprise knew no bounds when, having said that she would get straight to the point, Lady Cardell sat down on one knee and proposed to be friends. Having come to her senses, Evie clarified whether she herself was ready to be friends with someone like that, and what she would do if she were her friend. Corettle said that she did not say this when the girl began to talk about how sweet, beautiful, and inimitable she was. She said that she wants to fight her every day, because then she will be able to find all the weak points. Evie was in great surprise at these words, when suddenly a maid approached them and, apologizing, turned to the people of Lucas. Having stated that she was a servant of Her Majesty the Queen, the woman said that Her Majesty wished to speak with her. The house of Countess Lucius is a noble family that dominates high society, but the Queen does not like them at all. When Corettle said that she was busy, the maid again said that it was an order. Evie immediately exclaimed with respect and began to say that this order only concerned her, when the girl suddenly asked to go with her. Corettle said that the person she wanted to talk to was Evie, not the Queen. The maid wanted to object again when the girl noted that she was already in a meeting with a person. When Cardell said that it was too sudden and that she could have warned about the meeting in advance, the maid had to resign herself. Charles was quite surprised when Evie's screams suddenly rang out throughout the forest, calling him. When she asked why she was running, the girl said that someone was following her. At that moment, Corettle herself appeared, turned to Evie, and began to talk about how she should have warned in advance that she had a meeting. Having said that she had already warned her, Evie could not understand how anyone could try to befriend someone in order to find weaknesses. Noting that she was glad to meet him, Corettle bowed and introduced herself to the prince. Pointing to the boy, Evie announced that he was His Highness the First Prince Charles Legracio. After the performance, an awkward silence hung in the air because no one knew how to start a conversation. When the prince decided to ask why she ran, Evie said it was human instinct. The girl said that Lady Delafion threw her into the pond when, addressing Corettle, the prince noted that her trousers were wet. Seeing the prince's gaze on her, Evie asked him not to look at her like that because she knew that the pond was shallow. Evie asked in bewilderment why she had chased after her when Corettle said that she had important business and had to leave them. When the girl noted that her stalking instinct was kicking in, Evie pointed out that she was not yet a knight. Saying that she would invite her to the mansion next time, Cardell waved after her and suggested that they fight again. Having refused, Evie, with horror on her face, could not understand what was wrong with her and why she was such a weirdo. The girl asked him in bewilderment why he needed it, when, in response to her question about what he was looking for, Charles replied that he needed a mirror. Noting that it couldn't all be that strange, the boy noted that it might be closer than she thought. The Queen was furious when the maid told her how Lady Lucas had responded to her order. She understood that she was the same as her father, because their influence was so enormous that even the royal family was ignored. With thoughts of what she was about to force upon his only daughter, the Queen asked if she had said anything else. She was extremely furious when the maid told her that Cardell had been in the company of the knight's daughter Delafion. The Queen could not have imagined that Duke Delafion would be so stubborn, because she could not understand what such a commoner knew at all. She couldn't believe that someone so proud would show interest in a half-breed. Saying that she had been too lenient, the Queen decided to remind the commoner where her place was. With a wicked grin on her face, she stated that this was her duty as a member of the royal family. The boy asked in bewilderment what the noise was when Evie greeted him with bright cries. He noted that it was complete nonsense when the girl asked him to simply accept the fact that he was glad to see her. When Evie began to rejoice at the tremendous job she had done with the boy, Charles asked her in bewilderment why she was looking at him like that. Evie immediately started talking about how he found her so charming that he couldn't keep his eyes open. The girl was very happy that lately everything was going the way she wanted, despite the Queen. At this point, Charles suddenly told her not to open her eyes so wide because it looked disgusting. Realizing that they still had some work to do, Evie happily turned to the prince and handed him the toy. Calling it charming, she said that the snake looked very much like a prince. When he asked her to stop bringing him such things, Evie pointed out that there was nothing he didn't like. She immediately turned to him when he started talking about the fact that she could even know about his preferences. Evie immediately began listing that he was wearing a scarf, mittens, and even a sweater that she had given him. The prince did not know what to say in his defense, but the girl said that she was very glad that he was wearing them, because she understood that it was really cold in the room. After some arguing and awkward silence, Charles suddenly announced that the Queen had ordered him to take part in the New Year's celebrations. Having said that she had gone off the rails, Evie couldn't understand why she suddenly wanted him to attend the festival. Charles said that he did not know about her intentions, but he could not refuse either, and this would be the first time she would appear at an official event. When he said that the banquets would last for 3 days, Evie noted that this was true, because there had to be celebrations since it was a festival. The girl told him that people usually attend such events with partners because they involve dancing. When the prince pointed out that the queen and king would not choose a partner for him, the girl reluctantly agreed. She realized she couldn't allow this to happen when Charles pointed out that not having a partner felt like a failure. The boy immediately became embarrassed when, realizing that he had been beating around the bush for a long time, Evie asked if he wanted to invite her. After a slight hesitation, the embarrassed boy with a blush on his cheeks asked if she would go with him. Happy that after 6 months he had finally asked her for something, Evie asked with a smile if she should agree. Hearing this, the prince was extremely surprised, and Evie repeated the same question again. She understood that although they should be close enough, even friends should show politeness. Turning to him, Evie asked whether he really thought that she would meekly agree to everything. Charles agreed when Evie asked if His Majesty was now asking a favor of his only friend. Noting that in such a case he should ask politely, the girl clarified that politeness is the basis of any relationship. Saying that even she knew it, Evie said that such behavior was unacceptable. The boy was very surprised when Evie asked whether he should be taught how to invite a lady to become a partner. She found it funny that he only realized it now, but since she had a big heart, she forgave him. Turning to Lady de Laffion in a trembling voice, Charles asked if she would do him the honor of being his partner at the New Year's ball. With a shrug that he was rather awkward, Evie happily agreed. Noting that he had succeeded, the girl said that if he continued in the same spirit, he would be able to conquer half of the kingdom. He became very thoughtful when the girl mentioned another banquet. The New Year celebrations lasted for a week, the first day of which was the king's ceremonial speech to the citizens. From the 2nd to the 4th is time for families, and from the 5th until the end of the week, there is a palace ball for the nobility and festivals throughout the capital. While talking about admission, Cardell ordered the maid to bring a design suitable for Miss de Laffion. When she asked Evie if she could practice after that, the girl said that she always said that and then gave orders. With shining eyes, Caradel noted this as impossible when she noted that she was simply stronger than her. Evie thought she would give in after a couple of days, but she continued to give her gifts and send invitations to the palace. When asked if she had any friends at all, Cardell reported that they were all pathetic and boring. Even today, she told her that she would buy a dress, and despite the fact that Evie refused, she dragged her to the count. At the same time, Evie's father begged her with tears in his eyes because he was very happy that his daughter had finally made a friend. Evie noted that it would have been too small in a few months anyway, when the girl remarked that she would have made a new dress if there had been more time before the ball. Caradel immediately thanked her for her work when the maid reported that all preparations were complete. When Evie asked if she needed to try anything on herself, the girl said that her dress had been made 2 weeks ago. Caradel advised that she could wear them one at a time when Evie asked in confusion if she really would need all of them. She was very surprised when Cardell suddenly ordered the servants to send all this to the Baron's house. When Caradel began to enthusiastically suggest going to training, the heroine, after thinking for a bit, agreed. With thoughts of taking advantage of every opportunity, Evie noted that now they would see how resilient she was. 10 days later, Evie's father, looking at his daughter, could not understand when she had managed to grow so much. The boy said he still didn't like crowds when his father promised him they would go there together in 2 years. When Sanu asked when they would return, his father hugged him tightly and said that they would return before he went to bed. Turning to Lord de Laffion, the butler asked them to read the invitation more carefully. He clarified that the invitation was only intended for those who had a title or similar status. When Evie's father announced that his daughter had been invited as the first prince's partner, the butler still stood his ground. Evie herself understood that the baronial status was not inherited, and she had no right to attend the New Year's ball. Not knowing what to do, the girl's father awkwardly turned to her and informed her that he had missed something. When he noted that they were not allowed in, Evie did not understand why they were being shown the door like that, since the partner of a royal person is usually allowed in without questions. Nervously fiddling with her fingers, she couldn't figure out how to break through, because they had something to lose. She was in great surprise when Cardell appeared out of nowhere and announced that she was with her. When the butler wanted to object, the girl, without even giving him a chance to slander, asked if she should repeat it twice. He immediately exclaimed that they could pass, and Evie realized that he had immediately changed, although he had just been ready to burst with anger. When Evie was thanked, the girl said that it was not worth the thanks because she was simply stating the facts. The girl's father said that his girl was very beautiful and he was afraid that someone would pester her, but Evie said that she would deal with him. She just smiled silently when her father clarified that she would simply politely refuse. When Evie asked why she was without her parents, the girl said that they would come later because she doesn't like to be the center of attention. Evie couldn't believe that the one who throws down the gauntlet and challenges to a duel would say that, but despite this, she helped her. She also understood that her father felt guilty about this for the rest of his life. The girl said she was a child and needed to sleep when Cardell suggested they practice after the banquet. Cardell was delighted and considered it excellent when she learned that Evie would visit the Count's house after the New Year holidays. When the butler began making the announcement, Cardell said she hated it and had hidden behind her father at other banquets. When they entered the hall, everyone immediately began to whisper about who the girl next to Lady Lucius was. When one of the aristocrats greeted Cardell, noting that they had not seen each other for a long time, the girl was pleasantly surprised and asked how she was doing. When the woman asked who the girl was next to her, Cardell immediately introduced Evie and said that she was her friend. Evie herself also greeted the old woman, noting that she was very pleased to meet her. With a smile on her face, the girl continued to listen as everyone continued to whisper behind her back. Everyone was in great surprise when she suddenly announced that everyone should welcome the royal family and the first prince. Everyone immediately started talking about how this was his first appearance and that he had never shown up before. Evie was unpleasantly surprised when she looked up and saw the king and queen with sly grins on their faces. Seeing the two princes in front of her, she realized that they had definitely gone crazy. In the original story, Charles Le Gracio was sent to a secluded palace and of course did not appear at royal receptions. At that very moment, Evie wondered why they had called the first prince. After all, while the second one shone from head to toe, the first one was put on display in public without proper preparation. She was very angry that it was all for fun, and the king at that moment suggested opening the ball with the prince's first dance. When the queen agreed with him with a smile, the man said that the princes would invite the ladies like true gentlemen. Evie was very annoyed by the fact that everything was so predictable, and there would always be those who would play along with this ridiculous king and queen. They called it an invitation, but in reality it was just a complete setup, and that was why Evie and her father were detained at the gate. The young lady remarked that it would be her greatest joy when the second prince asked if she would do him the honor of sharing the dance with him. The heroine understood that they wanted to make Charles look like a laughing stock and left aside the only one with whom he could come to an agreement. Looking at the boy, she mentally asked him not to be sad, because that was not why she had tried so hard. She couldn't allow everything to go according to the original scenario, so with a loud cry throughout the hall, she called out to His Highness. Charles was quite surprised when Evie immediately rushed towards him, despite the fact that he asked her not to run so fast. The girl immediately said that the eldest daughter of the House of Delafian, Evie, was welcoming the first prince. With a trembling voice, Charles asked if she would do him the honor of sharing a dance with him, and at that moment a smile lit up his face. With a smile on her face and full of confidence, Evie happily agreed. Looking at the dancing couple, everyone noted that it was cute and said that the first prince moved quite confidently. At this time, looking at them, the queen was beside herself with anger. When she reminded him that she had ordered that no one who did not meet the standards be allowed in, the butler informed her that she had entered with Leia Lucius. Their intelligent son had impeccable manners and graceful movements, and his partner was the very definition of charm. The queen knew that they could be an example to everyone, but she could not understand why the first prince was so ridiculous. She was very angry that he was invited to the fun and that he was overshadowing the second prince. Seeing all the idiots looking at the despised prince, the queen realized that this would not do. Realizing that she did not need to delay, the queen immediately called her maid. When Evie asked where her father had gone, Charles said that he had gone to say hello to some viscount. The girl exclaimed with a smile that he remembered it when the prince reported that Lady Cardell had repeated 5 times that she was going to return after meeting with the count. Seeing his still childish naivety, Evie began to think about how she could tease him. Before she could address him with a sly grin, the queen suddenly called the first prince to come to her. Evie did not understand what this fit of friendliness was when the queen suddenly began to talk about how science and art were developing in both countries. Noting that they had neglected the exchange for some time, the queen announced that they had decided to send the first prince to another country for education. Hearing this, Evie was completely horrified and did not understand what kind of nonsense they had just blurted out. Cardell agreed with her when the girl noted that she did not understand at all why they would send him abroad if they had their own academy. The heroine didn't know what to do because she had only just begun to turn this stubborn man into a normal person. She was horrified by the fact that they had first hidden the child for 10 years in a remote palace, and now they were declaring that they would support his studies abroad. She also understood that the queen's influence in that country was much stronger than here. Having learned from Cardell that studying there takes at least 6 years, Avi became even more despondent. She understood that parents were interfering with the child's socialization, because for a boy like Charles, friends were the whole world. When she went out onto the balcony, the girl only thought about why adults behaved like that in public and did not understand what she should do. She was very angry that they weren't even letting her think and asked if there was anyone there. Her surprise knew no bounds when, turning around, she saw the first prince out of breath in front of her. When the girl greeted the second prince, he suddenly began to joyfully exclaim that he now definitely remembered. Evie asked in bewilderment if they knew each other when the boy began to say that he was now absolutely sure that it was her. Noting that she might not remember him, the second prince reported that she had once helped him in the summer, in the alley behind the bookstore. Evie said that she didn't mean anything when he looked at her with confusion after she said that the blonde was the main character. When the prince mentioned that he had something important to say, Evie remembered that he had promised to repay her when they met. After asking her if she still had the brooch he had given her, the second prince asked if she had sold it. From the very beginning, she thought he was just a child prodigy, so pretending to be a fool, Evie asked what he meant. The prince was completely perplexed when the girl asked with a smile whether she could not sell it. She clarified that she did not know he was a prince when he started talking about it being a breach of oath. When Evie asked how he knew she had sold it, the boy said that the merchant had told her about the sale, since the brooch had his symbols on it. He agreed that she wouldn't have been found when Evie pointed out that she should have sold her outside the kingdom. When the prince asked if the baron was in such trouble that he had to sell his gifts, the girl said that she had not sold everything. The boy was absolutely horrified when Evie revealed that she had sold the brooch only because it was a gift from a stranger. The girl was very surprised when the prince, with tears in his eyes, began to ask how she could do such a thing. When he started shouting about how he had shown kindness to a mere mortal, Evie asked him not to distort the facts, because she was the one who was kind. Evie started talking about how she was his savior, and he should be grateful because he would have been killed or sold. She clarified that the kidnappers would not have cared when the boy began to shout that he was a royal person and the only legitimate prince. With a horrified look, Evie clarified that it was she who saved the rightful prince from being kidnapped. When he thanked her in response to her question about what he should tell her, Evie asked him to move away, because her back was pressed against the gate. Evie was absolutely horrified when the wind blew the ribbon off her hair because she didn't know how she would shine without her ribbon. Seeing that the ribbon had been carried away to the tree, the second prince remarked that it had been carried away so easily. He was very surprised when he asked her what she was doing, Evie said that she was warming up. When the girl jumped onto the railing, the boy immediately began to dissuade her and say that he would climb down after her himself. He started shouting that it was a knight's duty because it was not proper for a lady to climb trees. The prince didn't know what to answer when Evie clarified that she was not a lady, and the prince was not a knight either. He confidently stated that he held his knightly duties sacred and would prove his pride and honor as a knight. Evie decided to resign herself, despite the fact that at first he would start a fight when they met, and then he would talk about honor. She looked in bewilderment at the prince hanging trembling on the branch and realized that he definitely wouldn't cope. When she suggested moving his leg, he started yelling at her to wait because he could handle it himself. He was in great surprise when, with agile movements, Evie jumped onto the branch and took the ribbon. With the same dexterous movements, she descended to the ground and asked the prince if he was going to descend. Evie was in great bewilderment when the second prince, with tears in his eyes, announced that he could not come down. The boy did not understand what she was talking about when, deciding not to argue with the child, Ei asked him to jump. When Evie said that she would catch him and that he had nothing to worry about, the prince began to talk about how he couldn't end up in the arms of a woman who wasn't even his fiancée. Understanding how conservative he was, the girl said that they could break the tree and then he would come down. When she began to guess how long it would take him to jump, the boy, with trembling in his body, began to scream that he would jump. The boy began to doubt, but at his own risk he still jumped from the tree. Falling to the floor with the prince, Evie noted that she had saved the prince twice and received nothing in return. They were both in great surprise when suddenly a cry was heard that they had finally found the second prince. Noting that he was ashamed, Evie's father said that it was his mistake, so he should be punished too. The queen was absolutely horrified when the king informed her that they had nothing to worry about as they were both safe. At this point, Evie reported that the prince himself volunteered to get the ribbon, and she simply followed him. The queen was absolutely horrified when the girl revealed that she was simply defending His Highness. When she asked if they noticed anything, the second prince immediately turned to his mother. At this point, Evie's father announced that although his daughter had acted recklessly, she too had suffered. He begged forgiveness with displeasure when the queen remarked on his blatant insolence. When the second prince began to say with tears that he had indeed overestimated his powers, the queen began to say that he was young and did not understand. The boy said he would remember this when the king reminded him that his body was not his alone. When the father and daughter were about to leave, Evie was suddenly asked why she hadn't called for help. Knowing that her father would not be able to hear her from such a distance, the girl said that she was afraid of being thrown out. The king was absolutely horrified when Evie told him everything and asked if anyone wanted to kick her out. He was completely surprised, and the girl asked in surprise who would dare to do this behind his back. Charles said he understood everything when the girl began to repeat to him again how he should behave. When he finally asked if she was okay, Evie said that although her head was aching, she would live. Evie was thoughtful when she asked him when he was leaving, Charles said the number 10. She was absolutely horrified when the boy announced that there were already 9 minutes left. When the boy suddenly noted that the queen's nephew would be going with them, Evie, not noticing that it was particularly important, asked if it was true that they were leaving right now. Hearing a positive answer, she asked with trembling why he was talking about this only now. She started screaming that he should have told her about this much earlier. Noting that she had probably heard this at the reception, the prince asked if he should say it again. Charles looked at her questioningly as she wondered if he could understand her if they were to switch places. Having said that, that was all. Evie asked him to listen to him more carefully, to which the boy immediately agreed. He was very surprised when, with thoughts of how she could better concentrate, what she could do now, the girl began to lecture. He didn't even try to say anything when the girl kept talking about how much you need to eat a day and how much sleep you need. Grabbing the boy by the hands, Evie told him that he had to write letters. The boy didn't quite understand, and she said that he should write to her both in joy and in sadness. He awkwardly agreed when Evie began asking him if he remembered how to write letters. Noting that he should send it as soon as he arrived, the girl said that she would also write to him. Having reported that he remembered everything, Charles thanked Evie with a smile on his face. After Charles Legracio left, Evie's life changed completely. Turning to Mrs. Nolte, I asked the girl what she was doing there. Noting that this was her room, she again asked what she was doing there, but the woman laughed and asked to call her aunt. Asking if she knew how to open the room, Nolte clarified that she wanted to clean it. When she asked how it was possible to let a stranger into her personal space, after the words that a special person was doing the cleaning, Evie clarified that she was also a stranger. She was furious when the woman, not understanding what she was saying, began to claim that she was her aunt. Nolte let out a disgruntled sigh when asked if she knew where the key was, Evie replied that she had no idea. This woman walked freely around their house thanks to this damn queen. Belle was horrified and asked her father why he was talking about moving to another area on his son's birthday. Noting that he could not find another moment, the man said that he was being sent to the north because there were not enough people there. Evie was absolutely horrified because she knew that he worked at the palace and should not have been sent to the north. She understood that her father had no connections in the north, so it was more like exile. Evie immediately began to scream with trembling body that this was obvious revenge because of that story at the reception. After asking how long he would stay there, she asked if they would go with him. The children did not understand what was wrong with him when, calling them to him, he turned to his beloved daughter and son. He said that he didn't know how long he was leaving, but as soon as they found a replacement, he would return immediately. Evie was horrified when he said he was going alone, because it was much colder in the north and there were many dangerous animals. When Evie asked who was stronger, her or the bear, her father said that in any case it was safer for them to stay in the capital. Having said that he had invited someone who could be with them in the evenings, unlike the servants, the father asked if they remembered Aunt Noltier. After that, she tried to persuade her father to leave her and Sana alone, but all was in vain. She herself understood that leaving children in such a huge mansion was madness, despite their behavior. The problem was that Noltier was only interested in the status of the Baroness, and she did everything to marry Evie's father, but he still didn't understand anything. Realizing that her father had left half a month ago, she began to shout loudly that she condemned the abuse of power. She realized that Noltier was behaving exactly as she had previously assumed. At that moment there was a knock on the door, and the courtiers who entered the room began to ask with tears in their eyes when the Baron would return. The atmosphere in the house was oppressive, because that woman sometimes behaved as if she was the eldest in the house and lectured the servants. Loading everyone up with work, she simply ran around the mansion as she pleased, instead of taking care of the children as a guardian. When she asked Sana if he remembered that she used an axe before, the boy asked if it was the same axe she used to blackmail her father. Agreeing, Evie asked with a horrified look if he was still there. Noting that she should look into the warehouse, Sanu began to try to stop her with bewilderment, saying that relatives cannot be killed. After telling him that she wasn't going to kill anyone, Evie asked him with a smile what was going on in his head. Not understanding how one could go after a person with an axe, she clarified that she needed it simply to intimidate him. Evie thought that if she raised the dark personality properly, everything would work out, because in the original, she was the very threat to their family. But she was wrong, because even if the course of events were changed, the foundation would remain the same, and their family would still suffer. She hadn't intended to interfere with the plot any more than she had to, but now she had a reason to do so. Evie cried out with joy when the servant suddenly announced that she had received a letter.